Hey everybody, JJ here, talking about some more of my favorite albums, and I figured I would get into a band probably nobody's ever heard of, and an album I don't think it ever really, anybody ever really listened to it much. It's one of those weird, obscure ones, Kiss Animalize. Clearly a joke, and a poor one at that, but if you're watching this channel, I'm sure Kiss needs no introduction. Um, For me, I would say that probably "Lick It Up" might have been the first kind of introduction I had to Kiss, and it's funny to say that because I have an older half brother who was a massive Kiss fan, and he's quite a bit older than me, so he was influenced and a big fan of '70s Kiss, the makeup, the black, the leather, the stage show. And when I heard "Lick It Up" and that era of Kiss, it was such a departure in the look of the band specifically. I almost couldn't fathom that it was the same band. It didn't make sense. There wasn't a lot of bands at that time doing the overly theatrical thing, and I'm talking early Kiss with the makeup. Like there wasn't a lot of bands doing that, and I was completely unaware of the member changes and all of that stuff. And later on, I obviously got into the '70s Kiss and that kind of stuff. But I wanted to talk about this album, Animalize. I always love this. This cover is so cool. I've actually sometimes I want to talk about albums and they get lost in the shuffle. There's a lot of them to go through back there. So I've actually had this one sitting down at the drum set for probably about 4 weeks now, so I didn't forget to talk about it. I've been chatting quite a bit with a friend of mine about Eric Carr and the influence he had on me as a drummer, and all that kind of stuff. So to get into Kiss, I recently just did a cover of probably my favorite song off this, which is "Thrills in the Night," which is really cool. And if you're unfamiliar with Eric Carr, he came in after Peter Criss departed the band, and amazing drummer. Peter Criss I have a lot of respect for as well, but Eric Carr ushered in kind of like the hard rock aspect that Kiss kind of is equally known for. He had massive, Peter Criss had large drum sets, but Eric Carr had more massive drum sets, and seeing him behind these huge kits and all this kind of stuff was so influential as a young drummer. And the double bass, and clearly that was something I always kept as in my kind of back pocket as a reference to, and something I always thought looked cool. And so his introduction into the band kind of ushered in this new, more of a kind of a hard rock, like a song like "I Love It Loud," things along those lines. So "Lick It Up" obviously comes along. That's kind of Kiss's new rebirth, into the '80s era. No makeup, they're dressing like women, and yeah, man, they really did look like women. It's crazy, but they bring in this whole new era, and it's so appealing. This is the age of music videos and things like that, and so seeing this the videos for all these early Kiss songs was so cool, and they were just always on rotation, on the music channels when I was kind of young. So Animalize comes along, and as I said, the songs that are on, like this album has so many great songs. If there's probably a lot of Kiss fans, but just if you're a casual kind of hard rock fan, and maybe you haven't given this record a real kind of run through besides maybe the singles, man, like the material that's on here is just insane. I've Had Enough, Into the Fire, which opens the album, incredible song, great up tempo. Everyone likely knows Heaven's on Fire. That was one of the singles that was on here. Get All You Can Take, amazing, really, really cool drum part as well. Lonely as the Hunter, awesome. He said my favorite song off of this album is "Thrills in the Night." which I just recently did a cover of. And Eric Carr has a really cool, very kind of unconventional drum part. It's not complex in really any way. It's just his choice of voice, his choice of voicings on the drum set, and it was really cool. And I remember hearing that and just kind of thinking it was weird, but then as I got older and more into drumming and just thinking what a cool choice that was to kind of make and very unconventional. And another song on here, Murder in High Heels. It's very cool, typical like Gene Simmons kind of lyrics, and you know what these guys like to sing about. Do I need to tell you what they like to sing about? It's clear as day. They love women. Don't ever get it twisted. But this album is just front to back. It's just one of those albums I can put on and not skip any songs on it, and probably start all over again as soon as it's done. It's a good listen all the way through, and an interesting time for the band too. Like they had after Ace and Peter Criss had left the bands, Eric Carr comes in, and he was in the band obviously until he died. But they had a real kind of like tumultuous era with guitar players during this time, and Mark St. John is on this album. I don't know if he actually recorded this album. I want to say he did. I don't know the history of it that well to know if he recorded or if he was just there for the live aspect of the band. But I know he wasn't around for very long. This is kind of like his one and done, really, when it comes down to being in Kiss. But just to talk a bit about Eric Carr and his influence, as I mentioned, with the big drum sets, and I loved the music, but it wasn't until a bit later on when I saw some of the live kind of concert videos from this era. There was one I remember seeing from Cobo Hall, which was a great performance, and then I think one from Japan as well, and a handful of others. There was a live video that they put out. It was like Kiss Thrills Uncensored, some VHS tape anyways, back in the late 80s or early 90s that I had watched, and it had some concert footage with Eric. And I remember being like very impressed with the drum set and the stage show. But then when it got into Eric doing his drum solo, I'd never really kind of seen an implementation of the Simmons pads that he had kind of mounted. And I was familiar with this, the Simmons drums from Rick Allen from Def Leppard utilizing them. But, he was kind of more or less using them just for drum sounds, whereas Eric in his drum solo was using them to actually like play chords and progressions and musical things that he also kind of implemented into his drum solo. And I was 10 years old, something like that, and not really that familiar with how any of that stuff worked. And I always thought that was just very, very cool and very impressive. And, he had clearly drumming chops, but it was an interesting way to do a drum solo. And, it kind of goes back to that, you're playing in arenas and like the typical kind of drum solo doesn't get you very far in a big arena because, the typical kind of the nuance of a drum solo kind of gets lost in a big venue like that. So it's more about big movements and show and all that kind of stuff. And Eric Carr was, one of the best of all time. His in that capacity. His drum solo for those arena rock shows was kind of like a real highlight of Kiss concerts at that time. And unfortunately, if Eric died, and I want to say it was just before Kiss released the Revenge album, and he had a lot of great performances up until that point, and much too young and well before his time, and Eric Singer comes into the band at that point, after Eric Carr, and is a great, fantastic drummer, and been with the band pretty much ever since. But Eric kind of, it always felt like Eric Carr. It always felt like a kind of a, something was missing after that. Like he never got kind of his not his due, but just, his place in the band was kind of like, he didn't give it up willingly, and it was always kind of a tinge of sadness with that, more or less. But yeah, at least he lives on in the videos and the concert performances, and the band at this time was, coming into the early 80s with Kiss. You have probably a real low point with the band. I like those albums personally, like Music from the Elder and Creatures of the Night, whatever it is. I like those albums, but yeah, it was when Kiss gets into removing the makeup and kind of embracing this new 80s party atmosphere and all that kind of stuff. Kiss was always about partying, but they really kicked it up a notch with the feathers in this era. And I gotta say, I want to do a video. Not all my videos tend to be about just drummers as my favorite musicians, but Paul Stanley has been near the top. At certain times, he's been my favorite. He kind of falls by the wayside sometimes, but without a doubt, since I've been young, Paul Stanley has been one of my favorite frontmen of all time. And as a joke once, somebody sent me this like 4 hours of Paul Stanley stage banter. And I just put it on while I was doing like housework, and I listened to the whole thing. It was amazing. It was one of the greatest YouTube videos ever. But so yeah, Paul Stanley has always been, he's so captivating to watch, and he's definitely one of those guys that's deserving of his own video when it comes to influences musically for me. And he's always been, the other, Gene Simmons is obviously his songwriting partner, and Gene, self-admittedly at that time, was kind of, he was on to other things, and the band was secondary. And Paul was kind of, left holding the bag a little bit, and kind of kept the spirit and the fire of Kiss alive during a time when it could have easily been extinguished. So, yeah, kudos to that guy for keeping things together and keeping the band going. So, but yeah, get back to the album. This is Animalize. This is it's got to be my favorite Kiss album. There's some other ones that are pretty high up there. Love Gun's great. Destroyer is an amazing album as well. But if you want to separate the eras, because they almost do feel like two distinct eras of the band. Of the 80s era, of the party era of Kiss. It's like, this one is hard to beat. Lick It Up is another one to check out if somehow you've never checked out anything from the 80s era of Kiss. Animalize, Lick It Up. Hot in the Shade's pretty good too. Yeah, I'll give it some love. But check out Animalize. Thrills in the Night, as I mentioned, I did a cover of that. I'll link it up here, but I've had enough. Into the Fire. The first album on this, or the first song on this album is very cool, but there's a lot of great material on this to check out. So if you haven't checked it out, give it a listen. This has been the one about Animalize from Kiss. The coolest cover ever. Cheers.